I'm Mary Maté, sitting in for Jimmy Dore here with Misha Pollan and Americans comedian Kurt Metzger. And this is a new study from CEPR, the Center for Economic Policy Research. It's called The Human Consequences of Sanctions. And check out what they find. 29% of the world economy is now under U.S., EU, or UN sanctions. 29%. Look at this chart. This is the number of countries that are under U.S.-led sanctions since 1960. And just look how much it's jumped to well over 50 now since the 1960s. And this is now the share of the world GDP under sanctions. Almost 30% of the world GDP is under U.S.-led sanctions. And look at how much it's grown over the last many decades. And this has been known for a while that U.S. sanctions cripple economies. But when the U.S. media covers it, it only gets slight mention. So we talk about all these countries that are facing crises, that are causing refugees, like Venezuela. We only mention in passing that our sanctions are causing their deprivation.
You know, I just think about this a lot because when I wouldn't even care about this, like why I would think that this is, and I think what it is it almost comes off, I mean, it's terrorism, by the way.
Yes.
But how it comes off of, because we're such a brutal, vicious empire, it's like, oh, well, we're doing the nice thing. We don't just blow them up and kill them.
Exactly.
So that's us being humane.
Yeah.
Starving you to death.
And we're not sending any troops to do it. You can do it with a stroke of a pen. You can impoverish people with a stroke of a pen. You can block their banks. You can block their transactions. And that has the same impact or a similar impact as war does without sending any troops.
Yeah, it's all cancel culture. Deplatforming works, Aaron.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So here's, for example, a rare acknowledgement in the New York Times that, and they say this, that oil sanctions helped decimate Venezuela's finances. That's how the media acknowledges it in passing. Oh yeah, our sanctions happen to help decimate a country's finances. And then we wonder why people are fleeing Venezuela.
The guy doesn't know how to manage his stuff.
That's a throwback to Vice. Check out our segment if you missed that. We did a tribute to Vice Media's greatest hits in spreading neocon propaganda. And what they said about Venezuela is that Venezuela doesn't know how to manage their oil. Meanwhile, outlets like the Times are more honest than supposed edgy outlets like Vice, because at least the Times acknowledges that U.S. sanctions help decimate the country's
Socialism
finances.
has never worked, Aaron, with crippling sanctions.
And this is a chart from a Venezuelan opposition economist, someone who opposes the government, but is nonetheless honest enough to recognize that right when U.S. sanctions hit in August 2017, that's when Venezuela's oil production craters, as they're designed to do. And that is Venezuela's main industry. So no wonder the country has gone through a hard time when sanctions are imposed to destroy its economy. In Iran, too, the Wall Street Journal notes that U.S. sanctions that target Iran's oil industry and financial sector are the main factor crippling the Iranian economy. That's the Wall Street Journal acknowledging that. Again, in passing, in a similar chart here, you have U.S. sanctions being imposed. And once they do, that's when Iran's currency starts to crater. Look at that. Right when it comes in, that's when you start seeing it go from here down to here like this. Down to here like this. So that's how U.S. sanctions work. And you even have some economists writing about sanctions who work for, prominent institutions acknowledging this. So, for example, here's one expert speaking recently to the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Oh. She's speaking to Matt Duss, who is the former Bernie advisor who constantly spews neocon talking points. But here she is acknowledging, and I think supporting the fact that U.S. sanctions hurt targeted populations.
Those sanctions that tend to work best are the ones that impose hardship on the population of targeted countries, exactly for the reason that we discussed.
Hear that? The U.S. sanctions that work best are those that impose hardship on the populations of targeted countries.
I don't understand the goal. Like, what do you mean works best? Works to do what? Is the goal to make them starve?
Yes, exactly.
Because it doesn't accomplish regime change.
Yes, but the goal is to make them suffer. That's exactly what it is.
A few minutes ago, because we want the population of targeted countries to tell their governments that they want them to change course. And so one tool to do that is to fuel inflation in targeted countries by essentially making access to foreign exchange reserves more difficult, for instance. So we need to recognize that this is a policy dilemma. On the one hand, we don't want people in sanctioned countries to suffer, but on the other hand, that's the most effective way for the U.S. to
gain. On the other hand, we don't give a shit about them?
Exactly. So to a sadist, it's a dilemma that on the one hand, people starve under our sanctions. On the other hand, though, it's pretty effective in hurting their countries and getting their governments to change their behavior to be more subservient to U.S. interests. That's what she's acknowledging there.
Oh, wow. No wonder people love us around the world. No wonder we're the greatest force for good, recognized by everyone who's not us.
We're telling jokes in Nashville, Honolulu, Los Angeles, Northampton, Massachusetts, Syracuse, Cohoes, New York, Hartford, Connecticut, Baltimore, Chicago, Rosemont, San Diego, and more. Go to jimmydore.com to get a link for all those tickets. Plus, you can watch my new special, COVID Lies Are Funny.